LeetCode problem number 73, set matrix zeros. So this problem gives us a m times n integer matrix, and if an element is 0, we have to set its entire row and column to zeros. So here are some examples. So if this is 0, the entire row and column will be 0. Right, same thing here, row and columns are all 0. Okay, pretty straightforward problem. Now let's take a look at the solution. And there are some follow-ups as well. So here it wants us to try and create a constant space solution, meaning that we don't allocate any extra memory for, let's say, another matrix, right? We have to use the matrix alone, matrix provided to solve this problem, right? We have to solve it in place as well. So meaning we can't allocate another memory, another block, another 2D matrix to solve this. Okay, so my solution to this problem is to have the, okay, so let's say for example we have this matrix, right? So let me draw it here. Pull this a bit. So let's say we have this, so 1 1 1 1 0 1 1 1 1. So we have either two vectors, right? And basically when we found a 0, we can basically just tick here as a tick as well, and the rest are just false, right? So after we iterated through the entire matrix, we just look at the tick columns and rows and make them all zeros, right? So that's the idea behind it. This is also to prevent, let's say if we have like another 0 here, for instance, it will not change the tick, but here it will basically just change it to another tick, right? Then in this case, all of these will be turned into 0, and it will be, yeah, pretty straightforward solution to that. But because we cannot allocate space for these two arrays of true and false, right, these two booleans, so what we have to do is use the space inside of the array instead, right? So what we're going to do is, for let me clear the whole thing and draw it again. So what we're going to do is we first deal with the first row and column of the matrix, right? So here you can see I have a first row and first column, right? These two for loop will basically check whether or not there is a 0 in either one of, in either the column, in either the row or the column, right? If there is, let's say, a 0, then it will be set to true, and later on over here we will convert the entire row or column into zeros, right? So that's half of the chunk of code explained. Basically this chunk and this chunk is to basically take care of the first row and column, right? Because we're going to use this space, here to store our, the tick and crosses. Okay. Next, over here, this is where we store the tick and crosses. So instead of tick and crosses, we are storing it as just zeros, right? So what I mean is, let's say we have something like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 0, 6, 7, 8, 9. So again, we have done through this. So first row is false. First row, first column is also false. First row or first column is false, right? Because they don't contain zeros. And then next thing we do is we iterate through the entire column, and we iterate through the entire cell of the matrix, right? I equals to 1, starting from 1 because we don't want to deal with the first row and first column. If the matrix is 0, we basically set it to 0, right? So since this in this case is 0. So what we do is we set these two number to 0, right? We change this back to 0, and that's basically it. So now over here in this for loop, we are checking if either the first row has a 0, or this column, this row has a 0, or this column has a 0. Then we just set everything inside it to 0, right? This tree will be 0. And once it is done, of course, we have to check whether our first row and first columns are 0. Since they are not, we can just leave them as it is, right? So it'll be 1, 0, 3, 0, 0, 0, 7, 0, 9. Okay, that's the answer for 1, 2, 3, and then blah, blah, blah. Okay, so basically that's the approach I have to this problem. Pretty straightforward, I do say so myself. Not that hard to solve it in mn space. It took me some time to solve it in m plus n as well, but the constant space just came in mind that I can just use the space in the matrix. So yeah, that's just it. I think the hardest part for me in this problem is basically from m times n to m plus n. Constant space just came into this. It's not really that difficult once you have figured this out, right? That you can just use the matrix given, you can use the space given in the matrix. I think that's about it. That's all I have to share. Thanks.